I took the job at Blackwood National Forest because I needed the money. My student loans were a mountain of paper with my name on them, and the ranger position paid better than most entry-level gigs I was qualified for. The interview had been brief, conducted over the phone by a man named Henderson who never once asked about my forestry experience. Instead, he'd focused on whether I could follow precise instructions without question. "Can you do exactly as you're told, even if it seems strange?" he'd asked. "Yes," I'd said. "Good," he'd replied. "That's all that matters here." The drive to the ranger station took 4 hours from the nearest town with a traffic light. My beat-up sedan struggled on the winding dirt road that cut through towering pines. The trees were ancient, their bark thick and grooved like the faces of old men. The GPS lost signal 20 miles back, but Henderson had mailed detailed directions along with the keys. At exactly 2:17 p.m., I pulled up to a small cabin with a faded Forest Service sign. The building looked older than me, weathered by decades of rain and snow. A newer metal structure stood 50 yards behind it, equipment storage according to my instructions. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything was neat but worn. A desk dominated the main room with a logbook, radio equipment, and 3 thick binders labeled procedures. The kitchen area held basic supplies, enough for a week. In the bedroom, a cot with a wool blanket looked like it hadn't been replaced since the 1980s. My predecessor had left little behind. Just a single photograph face down on the nightstand and a coffee mug in the sink stained with the ghost of a long, cold drink. I checked my watch. 2:42 p.m. Henderson had said the previous ranger would leave by noon, giving me time to settle in before my first shift began at 4:00 p.m. The cabin felt empty, too quiet. Outside, the forest stood unnaturally still. No birds, no insects, just the oppressive silence of trees that seemed to watch rather than simply exist. I walked a circuit of the main room, counting my steps, 42 from the desk to the kitchen counter and back again. I tested the locks on the doors and windows. All were sturdy. I tried the radio. Channel 3 was just static but clear. Channel 6 was silent, as expected. The red light beside it remained dark. The binders contained my job duties. The first held standard forestry protocols, fire prevention, trail maintenance, wildlife documentation. The second contained radio frequencies and emergency contacts. The third binder was different. Its pages were yellowed with handwritten notes in the margins. The title read Blackwood Protocols in block letters. I was looking for a map of the sensor grid and opened this binder by mistake. I was about to close it when a heading caught my eye. Post-shift procedures. Curious, I flipped through the pages, noting sections on perimeter checks, supply inventories, and communication procedures. Nothing seemed unusual until I reached the final page where someone had written a list in neat, deliberate handwriting. I glanced at my watch again. 3:18 p.m., less than an hour until my shift began. I decided to review the list carefully, commit it to memory before starting my duties. The rules were numbered 1 through 12. 1. Always begin your shift by checking all perimeter sensors. If any sensor shows interference, do not investigate. Note the time and location in your log, then continue your routine. 2. Between sunset and sunrise, never look directly at the trees when they cast shadows in your direction. Use your peripheral vision only. 3. If you hear footsteps that match your pace exactly, do not turn around. Increase your speed by exactly 10% until the sound falls behind. 4. The radio must be checked every hour on the hour. Use only Channel 3 for routine checks. Channel 6 is for emergencies only. Never speak on Channel 6 unless you see the red light flashing on the equipment panel. 5. Inventory all supplies at 6:01 p.m. and 6:00 a.m. Note any discrepancies immediately. If anything is missing, do not search for it. Mark it as unaccounted for and continue. 6. Never answer a knock at the door during your shift unless the knock pattern is 3 quick, 2 slow. All other patterns must be ignored. 7. The west bathroom is off limits after 10 p.m. Use the east bathroom only, even if it requires walking the longer route. 8. If you encounter a deer with backward-facing antlers, do not approach. Document the sighting from at least 50 yards away and retreat slowly. 9. Salt circles must be refreshed around the cabin perimeter at 9 p.m. exactly. Use the container marked with white tape only. The container with red tape is for emergencies only. 10. Never speak your name aloud during your shift. Refer to yourself as Ranger when necessary. 11. If you hear a child crying in the forest, do not investigate. Note the time and direction in your log, then play white noise through the external speakers for exactly 7 minutes. 12. Your shift ends at 8 a.m. The next ranger will arrive by 8:30 a.m. Do not leave until you have completed the inventory and handed over the logbook in person. I closed the binder, my heart beating faster than it should. These weren't standard forest ranger protocols. They felt like the ramblings of a paranoid recluse. But Henderson had been clear about following instructions, and I needed this job. The rules were specific, testable, operational. Nothing about ghosts or monsters, just procedures to follow. I could do that. I chalked it up to an old ranger's superstitions, a way to make a boring job feel more important. At 3:47 p.m., I walked outside to familiarize myself with the perimeter. The forest seemed darker now despite the afternoon sun. Shadows stretched longer than they should have. I counted my steps as I circled the cabin, 73 steps to complete one circuit. The salt containers were where the rules said they'd be, sitting on a small shelf by the back door. White tape on one, red on the other. I tested the perimeter sensors, all functioning normally. So far, so good. Back inside, I made coffee and checked the radio equipment again. Channel 3 came in clear with static. Channel 6 was silent as expected. The red light beside it remained dark. At 4 p.m. exactly, I began my first shift as a ranger at Blackwood National Forest. I wrote the date and time in the logbook, signed it as Ranger, and prepared to follow the rules. Whatever they were protecting me from, I was determined not to find out. The first week passed without incident. I fell into a routine that felt almost normal despite the strange rules. I checked sensors every 2 hours, inventoried supplies at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., refreshed the salt circle at 9 p.m. Each task was performed with precision, timed to the minute. The forest remained quiet, unnervingly so. No birds, no animals, just the rustle of leaves when the wind picked up. The first real test of the rules came on the third night. At 6 p.m. I began my first inventory. It was a meticulous process. 12 cans of beans, 8 of corn, 24 bottles of water, 3 rolls of duct tape, 1 first aid kit. I counted everything twice. Everything was in order. As I was closing the supply closet, I noticed something. The first aid kit was on the middle shelf. I could have sworn it had been on the top shelf when I'd first arrived. I hesitated, then decided I must have been mistaken. I noted its position in the logbook anyway, a small detail to justify my own growing paranoia. On Tuesday of my second week, I noticed something odd during my afternoon patrol. The trees seemed to have shifted position overnight. I knew that was impossible. Trees don't move, but the familiar landmarks I'd been using were slightly off. The twisted oak I used as my western marker was now 5 yards further south than it had been the day before. I noted it in my logbook but didn't dwell on it. Rules were rules and none mentioned trees moving. That night at 2:14 a.m. I heard footsteps outside the cabin. I was on patrol, walking a path 30 yards from the front door. The crunch of leaves behind me matched my pace exactly. Rule 3. I didn't turn around. Instead, I quickened my steps by 10%, counting carefully in my head. The footsteps behind me sped up too, keeping perfect rhythm. I broke into a jog, then a run, circling the cabin twice before the sound finally fell behind. I didn't stop until I was back inside. The door bolted, my heart hammering against my ribs. I hadn't felt that kind of primal fear since I was a child. At 6 a.m., I inventoried supplies as usual. Everything was accounted for except one flashlight, missing from the storage closet. I marked it unaccounted for in the logbook as Rule 5 required. My hands shook as I wrote. The flashlight had been there yesterday, I was sure of it. I'd used it during my evening patrol. Friday brought the next test. At 8:47 p.m. during my perimeter check, I saw it, a deer standing just beyond the tree line, its antlers curved backward toward its body. Rule 8. I stopped exactly 50 yards from it, pulled out my notebook and documented the time, location, and description. The deer watched me with eyes that seemed too intelligent, too aware. It took a step forward, its leg bending at an angle that was biomechanically wrong. I finished writing, then backed away slowly, never turning my back until I was safely inside with the door bolted. The radio remained silent except for my hourly checks. Channel 3 always clear, Channel 6 always dark. I began to wonder if the previous ranger had been playing an elaborate joke, or if I was going crazy from isolation. The pay was good, but was it worth this? Each night, I lay awake listening, waiting for something to happen. Each morning I inventoried supplies, finding small discrepancies, a missing battery, a half-empty water bottle, a salt container that seemed lighter than it should have been. My third week started with a storm. Heavy rain fell at 5:18 a.m., turning the forest into a dripping gray world. During my morning patrol, I discovered that part of the salt circle had washed away. I noted the time and location in my logbook, then retrieved the white-taped container to refresh it. As I worked, I noticed something in the trees, movement that didn't match the wind's direction. I focused on my task, careful not to look directly at the shadows as Rule 2 instructed. I saw a shadow detach itself from a larger one, move with purpose, then merge back into the darkness. I blinked, and it was gone. A trick of the light, I told myself. That evening at 7:32 p.m., someone knocked at the door. 2 quick, 3 slow, wrong pattern, Rule 6. I sat perfectly still, not making a sound. The knocking came again, louder this time. 2 quick, 3 slow, still wrong. I held my breath, counting to 60 in my head. The knocking stopped. I waited 5 full minutes before moving again, my heart pounding against my ribs. At 9:01 p.m., I went outside to refresh the salt circle. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest damp and misty. As I worked, I heard it, a child crying from somewhere deep in the woods. Rule 11. I finished the circle quickly, went back inside, noted the time and direction in my logbook, then activated the white noise through the external speakers. 7 minutes exactly. The crying continued for another 2 minutes, then faded away. Sleep became difficult after that. I started taking naps during the day, never more than 2 hours at a time. The forest seemed to press closer to the cabin each night, the trees inching forward when I wasn't looking. I began measuring distances with a tape I found in a drawer. The twisted oak was now 12 yards further south than it had been on Tuesday. The perimeter sensors showed interference at random intervals, always between 2:01 a.m. and 4:01 a.m. On Saturday night at 3:07 a.m., the red light next to Channel 6 began flashing. Rule 4. I picked up the microphone, my hands trembling slightly. "Ranger here," I said. "Reporting sensor interference at northwest quadrant. Time, 3:07 a.m. Static hissed from the speaker, then a voice, familiar but wrong. "Ranger, this is Henderson. We've got a situation developing. Protocol 7 is now in effect. Repeat, Protocol 7 is in effect." I checked the binders. Protocol 7 wasn't listed in any of the standard procedures. It wasn't among the 12 rules either. My blood ran cold. Henderson, I don't have Protocol 7 in my documentation. Please clarify. More static, then the voice again. New protocol, Ranger. Effective immediately. The west bathroom is now off limits at all times. Use the east bathroom only. Do not, under any circumstances, enter the west bathroom. Is that clear? Clear, I said, though it wasn't. The west bathroom had already been off limits after 10 p.m. Why extend it to all hours? Good, the voice said. Continue routine patrols. Report any unusual activity immediately. Henderson out. The red light went dark. I sat at the desk, writing everything in the logbook. The radio call, the new protocol, the time. When I finished, I walked to the west bathroom and stood before the door. Nothing seemed different about it, just a small bathroom with a toilet, sink, and shower. Yet now it was forbidden at all hours. I wondered what had happened to make Henderson issue this new rule so urgently. The next morning, during my inventory check, I discovered another flashlight missing from the storage closet. I marked it unaccounted for, same as before. But this time I also noted that the salt container with red tape was lighter than it should have been. Someone had been using it, but I hadn't. I was the only person here. Sunday passed quietly, too quietly. No footsteps matching my pace, no strange knocks, no crying children. The forest seemed to be holding its breath. I found myself pacing the cabin, counting steps, 73 to complete one circuit. I did this 12 times before forcing myself to stop. At 10:47 p.m., the red light flashed again. I grabbed the microphone. Ranger here. Ranger Henderson again. We have additional protocols, effective immediately. The voice sounded strained, urgent. Are you ready to copy? Ready? Protocol 13. Do not, under any circumstances, look in mirrors after dark. Cover all reflective surfaces by 9:30 p.m. each night. I glanced at the small mirror above the bathroom sink. Understood. Protocol 14. If you hear someone calling your name, do not respond. The voice is not what it seems. I hadn't spoken my name aloud since starting this job, but the rule still sent a chill down my spine. Protocol 15. The inventory must now be conducted every 4 hours instead of twice daily. 6 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m., 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 6 a.m. That was excessive, nearly impossible to maintain with patrol requirements. Understood? Protocol 16. Salt circles must now be refreshed every 2 hours instead of once at 9 p.m. That would use up my supplies quickly. I calculated how long the white-taped container would last at this rate. Not long enough. Final protocol, Ranger. Protocol 17. If you see the previous Ranger's photograph face up on the nightstand, leave immediately. Do not pack. Do not take anything with you. Just leave. Do not stop until you reach the main road. I turned to look at the bedroom. The photograph was still face down where it had been since I arrived. Understood. These protocols are effective immediately, Ranger. Follow them precisely. Henderson out. The red light went dark. I sat at the desk, adding the new protocols to my logbook. 5 new rules in one night. Something was happening. Something bad. I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel, then retrieved all the other reflective surfaces I could find. A small compact, my phone screen, a polished metal tray. I stored them in a drawer, then checked my watch. 11:18 p.m., time to refresh the salt circle again. The night air was cold, damp with mist that swirled around my ankles. As I worked, I heard it again, footsteps matching my pace exactly. Rule 3. I didn't turn around, just quickened my steps by 10%. The footsteps behind me sped up too, keeping perfect rhythm. I broke into a jog, then a run, circling the cabin twice before the sound finally fell behind. This time it felt closer, more persistent. Back inside, I conducted another inventory. Everything accounted for. I made coffee, drank it standing at the window, watching the forest. The trees seemed taller now, their branches reaching toward the cabin like skeletal fingers. I wondered how much longer I could do this. The money was good, but my sanity was fraying. At 2 a.m., the red light flashed again. I picked up the microphone. "Ranger here." Static, then the voice. "Ranger, we have a situation. The previous ranger, his name was Miller, did not follow Protocol 17. He's still here." I felt a cold dread wash over me. "What do you mean he's still here?" "He didn't leave when he should have. He's trapped now, between worlds. He might try to contact you, to warn you. Do not listen, do not engage, follow the protocols precisely." "Understood." "There's one more thing, Ranger. The salt containers. Only use the white taped one. The red taped one is compromised. Do not use it under any circumstances." But I'd already noted that someone had been using the red taped container. Has someone else been here? No one else should be there. If you see signs of another presence, follow Protocol 18. Do not acknowledge it. Do not interact. Pretend you don't notice. Protocol 18 wasn't mentioned before. It's new, effective immediately. Follow all protocols precisely, Ranger. Your life depends on it. Henderson out. The red light went dark. I sat at the desk, my hands shaking so badly I could barely write. Protocol 18. Signs of another presence. I thought of the missing flashlights. The lightened salt container, the moved photograph. Someone had been here, was still here perhaps. Miller? Or something else wearing his form? At 2:17 a.m. I heard it, a soft whisper from the bedroom. "Ranger." The voice was male, familiar somehow. I froze, remembering Protocol 14. If you hear someone calling your name, do not respond. But it hadn't called my name, just my title. Was that close enough to count? "Ranger." The voice came again, closer this time. I didn't move, didn't acknowledge it. Just sat at the desk, counting to 60 in my head. The whispering stopped after 37 seconds. I waited 5 full minutes before moving again. At 6:00 a.m., I conducted another inventory, everything accounted for. I made coffee, drank it black, then prepared for my morning patrol. The forest looked the same as always. Too quiet, too still. As I stepped outside, I noticed something new. Small footprints in the damp earth around the cabin, too small to belong to an adult. Too perfect to belong to an animal. I followed the tracks for about 20 yards, then remembered Protocol 18. Do not acknowledge. Do not interact. Pretend you don't notice. I turned back to the cabin, forcing myself not to look at the footprints again. Inside, I noted their presence in my logbook without describing them in detail. Just unusual tracks outside perimeter. The day passed slowly. I refreshed the salt circle every 2 hours, conducted inventory every 4 hours, checked the radio hourly. The red light remained dark. At 4:32 p.m., I heard a knock at the door. 3 quick, 2 slow, the correct pattern. Rule 6. I approached the door cautiously, looking through the peephole. No one was there. I waited 30 seconds, then opened the door. On the mat sat a small box wrapped in brown paper. No label, no address. I brought the box inside, placed it on the desk, and stared at it. Protocol 18 said not to acknowledge signs of another presence, but this was a physical object. I couldn't just ignore it. I opened the box carefully. Inside were 2 items, a photograph and a key. The photograph showed a man in a ranger uniform smiling. The back was labeled Miller. The key was small, brass, with no identifying marks. I checked the logbook from previous months, looking for mentions of Miller. His entries were precise, detailed at first, then increasingly erratic toward the end. The final entry, dated 3 weeks before my arrival, read simply, They're in the trees. They watch. They wait. I made a mistake. Don't make the same one. Below that, in different handwriting, Miller failed to follow Protocol 17. Do not repeat his error. I placed the photograph and key in the desk drawer, then noted their appearance in my logbook. At 6 p.m., I conducted another inventory, everything accounted for. I made dinner, ate it at the desk, then prepared for my night patrol. The forest seemed darker than usual, the shadows deeper. I took my flashlight from the storage closet, then remembered the missing ones. This one felt lighter than it should have. At 8:47 p.m. during my patrol, I saw it again. The deer with backward-facing antlers. This time it was closer, only 30 yards away. I stopped, pulled out my notebook, and documented the sighting. The deer watched me with those two intelligent eyes, then took a step forward. Rule 8 said to document from 50 yards and retreat slowly. I was already too close. I backed away slowly, never turning my back until I was safely inside with the door bolted. At 9:30 p.m., I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel, then checked all other reflective surfaces to ensure they were stored away. Protocol 13. At 10 p.m., I conducted another inventory, everything accounted for. At 10:15 p.m., the red light flashed again. I picked up the microphone. Ranger here. Ranger Henderson, we have reports of unusual activity in your sector. Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary? I thought of the footprints, the box, the key, the photograph. No unusual activity to report. Good. Continue routine patrols. Follow all protocols precisely. Henderson out. The red light went dark. I sat at the desk, wondering why I'd lied. Protocol 18 said not to acknowledge signs of another presence, but this felt different. This felt like hiding. I opened the drawer, looked at Miller's photograph again. He seemed so normal in the picture, so human. What had happened to him? What mistake had he made? At 11 p.m., I refreshed the salt circle again. The white-taped container was getting light. I calculated how many more refreshes I could manage before it ran out. Not enough for the rest of my shift, let alone the weeks to come. I looked at the red-taped container, remembered Henderson's warning not to use it. What was wrong with it? Why was it compromised? Back inside, I heard a noise from the bedroom, a soft rustling like pages turning. I approached cautiously, remembering Protocol 14. The whispering came again. Ranger, don't trust Henderson. The voice was male, desperate. Miller, or something wearing his form. I didn't respond, just stood in the doorway watching. The photograph on the nightstand had moved. It was now face up, showing a blank back. Protocol 17. If you see the previous ranger's photograph face up on the nightstand, leave immediately. Do not pack. Do not take anything with you, just leave. Do not stop until you reach the main road. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when I remembered the key. Miller's key. What did it unlock? What would I find if I stayed? Protocol 17 was clear, leave immediately. But something kept me rooted to the spot. Curiosity, stupidity, or a sense that I needed to understand before I fled. The whispering came again, closer now. The west bathroom. Use the key. I turned to look at the west bathroom door. Protocol 7 amended said it was off limits at all times. Protocol 18 said not to acknowledge signs of another presence. But the voice, Miller's voice, was telling me to do the opposite of what Henderson had instructed. Who was right? What was real? I took a step toward the west bathroom, then another. The whispering stopped. The cabin fell silent, too silent. I reached the bathroom door, key in hand. As I inserted it into the lock, I heard a knock at the front door. 3 quick, 2 slow, the correct pattern. Rule 6. I hesitated, key halfway into the lock. Who could be knocking at this hour? Henderson had never come to the cabin in person. No one was supposed to be here but me. I withdrew the key, walked to the front door, and looked through the peephole. No one was there. I waited 30 seconds, then opened the door. On the mat sat another box, identical to the first. I brought it inside, opened it carefully. Inside were 2 items, a journal and another key. The journal was small, leather-bound, with Miller embossed on the cover. The key was identical to the first one. I opened the journal, flipped to the first entry. It was dated 3 months before my arrival. Day 1 at Blackwood. Henderson gave me the rules, 12 of them, strange but specific. I can follow them. The pay is good, better than anything else I could get. I need this job. I flipped through the pages, reading quickly. Miller's entries mirrored my own experience at first. Routine patrols, strange occurrences, escalating rules. About 2 months in, his tone changed. They're changing the rules again. 5 new protocols tonight. Henderson sounds panicked on the radio. I found footprints outside the cabin, small, almost human. The salt containers seem to be using themselves. I'm documenting everything, but I wonder if anyone will ever read this. A month before his final entry. The rules are contradicting themselves now. Protocol 7 says never use the west bathroom. Protocol 13, new, says to use the west bathroom only between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Which one is right? I followed Protocol 7 last night. Tonight I'll try Protocol 13. Something's wrong here. The rules aren't protection, they're a test. 2 weeks before his final entry. I found a key in a box outside my door. It unlocks the west bathroom. Inside there's another door, another lock. I think Henderson knows about this place, what's really here. I think the rules are designed to keep us from discovering the truth. Or maybe they're designed to ensure we do. 1 week before his final entry. I used the key, entered the west bathroom at 2 a.m. exactly. The inner door led to a staircase descending into darkness. I took 12 steps down before my flashlight died. Something moved below me. I ran back up, locked both doors, and didn't leave the cabin until morning. Tonight I'll try again with more batteries. 3 days before his final entry. 23 steps down. That's as far as I got. The walls are covered in symbols similar to the ones in the rulebook. There's a room at the bottom, but I couldn't enter. Something was inside, moving. I heard it whispering my name. I ran again. I'm running out of time. The rules are changing faster now, becoming more contradictory. I think Henderson is trying to get me killed. Or worse. His final entry. I went back tonight, 30 steps down. The room at the bottom was empty, but there was another door. I opened it. Inside I saw them. They're not what I thought. They're not monsters, they're us. Previous rangers trapped here. They tried to warn me, but it was too late. I'm changing now, becoming one of them. The rules aren't to protect us, they're to feed them. Each time we follow a rule, we give them something. Each time we break a rule, we give them something else. There's no way out, no way to win. The only choice is how we lose. I'm leaving this journal and the keys for the next ranger. Maybe they'll make a different choice. Or maybe there is no choice. Never was. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. The west bathroom, the keys, the rules. It all connected somehow. I looked at the 2 keys in my hand, then at the west bathroom door. Protocol 7, amended, said it was off limits at all times. Protocol 18 said not to acknowledge signs of another presence. But Miller's journal suggested the rules were designed to harm, not protect. The next day, the sky turned a bruised purple. The weather report on the radio, which I now checked obsessively, spoke of a fast-moving system with anomalous pressure readings. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of ozone and wet earth. At 7 p.m., the red light flashed. I braced myself. Ranger Henderson. The voice was flat, devoid of emotion. We are implementing a series of amendments based on recent developments. You will copy them verbatim. Do you understand? Understood. Amendment 1. All previous protocols regarding the West Bathroom are rescinded. The West Bathroom is now strictly forbidden. Entry for any reason constitutes a terminal breach. My blood ran cold. A terminal breach, that was new. Amendment 2, the inventory will now be conducted hourly on the hour. Any discrepancy, no matter how small, must be reported via Channel 6 immediately. That was impossible. It would leave no time for anything else. Amendment 3, the salt circle is now your only perimeter defense. Do not rely on sensors. The sensors are for our records, not your protection. Amendment 4. You will no longer conduct patrols outside the cabin. All movement is restricted to the interior. Amendment 5. If you hear a voice, any voice that you recognize, you will initiate Protocol Omega. Place your hands over your ears and hum until the voice ceases. Do not speak. Amendment 6. The photograph of Miller is a potential vector. If it moves again, you are to destroy it with fire. Amendment 7. The red-taped salt container is now to be used exclusively. The white-taped container is compromised. This was a direct contradiction of Henderson's last order. Which one was right? The one from days ago or this one? Amendment 8. You will find a new box outside the east door at sunrise. It contains further instructions. Do not open it until 8:00 a.m. exactly. These amendments are effective immediately. Henderson out. The red light went dark. I sat at the desk, the new rules swimming in my head. They were a cage tightening around me. No patrols, hourly inventory, destroy the photograph, use the red salt. The contradictions were piling up, a deliberate maze with no exit. I felt a profound sense of dread, deeper than anything I had felt before. This wasn't a test. This was a verdict. At 8 p.m., the storm hit with the force of a physical blow. Rain lashed against the windows and wind howled through the pines like a living thing. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the cabin into darkness. The emergency generator kicked in, powering only the radio and a single bare bulb in the main room. At that exact moment, the red light for Channel 6 began to flash. I picked up the microphone, my heart a frantic drum. "Ranger here." A new voice answered, cold and genderless, like synthesized text. "Emergency protocols are now in effect. Power failure is a Category 1 event. You will comply." I waited, my hand frozen on the microphone. "Protocol 1. All exterior doors and windows will be sealed with industrial tape. Begin with west-facing windows. Proceed clockwise." Protocol 2. Radio silence is in effect except for automated status reports. You will report all secure every 30 minutes on Channel 6. No other communication is permitted. Protocol 3. If a knock is heard on any sealed surface, you will begin counting aloud from 100. You will not stop counting for any reason. If you reach 0, you will report breach contained and resume silence. Protocol 4. The salt circle is now compromised. Create a secondary barrier using the contents of the red-taped container across all thresholds. A continuous line is required. Protocol 5. Do not, under any circumstances, look out the windows. Remain in the center of the main room. Await further instructions. The voice fell silent. The red light remained on, a malevolent eye. I grabbed the roll of industrial tape from the supply closet and went to the west-facing window. As I began to tape the edges, a flash of lightning illuminated the forest outside. For a split second, I saw them. Figures standing between the trees, dozens of them, all facing the cabin. They were translucent, shimmering in the storm's light. I recoiled, my back hitting the wall. Protocol 5. Don't look. I forced myself to turn away, my hands shaking as I continued to work. I sealed the last window, then the door. The cabin felt like a tomb. I took the red-taped salt container and poured a thick line across every doorway and window frame. The salt was a strange, dark gray color and smelled faintly of iron and decay. As I worked, I heard it. A knock, a single sharp rap on the front door. 100, I said aloud, my voice cracking. 99, 98. The knocks came again, faster this time, a frantic drumming on the wood, on the windows, on the roof. It was all around me. 76, 75, 74. I heard a new sound, the scrape of a fingernail or something like it working its way under the edge of the duct tape on the front door window. A tiny corner peeled back. 42, 41, 41. I stuttered, lost my place. The scraping sound stopped. A low whisper came from the edge of the window right where the tape had lifted. "Ranger, let us in." I squeezed my eyes shut. 30, 29, 28. The whispering changed, became a chorus of voices, men and women, all speaking at once. "We're so hungry, let us in, we just want to talk." 10, 9, 8. The scraping sound returned, more frantic now. More of the tape peeled away. I could smell the storm, the wet pine, something else, something old and hungry. 3, 2, 1, 0, I gasped. "Breach contained." Silence. The scraping stopped. The whispering ceased. The only sound was the rain and the hum of the generator. I sank to the floor, my body trembling uncontrollably. I had to report in. I crawled to the radio. "All secure," I said into the microphone. The red light winked out. I was alone again in the dark. I stayed in the center of the room as Protocol 5 commanded until the first gray light of dawn seeped through the cracks in the taped-up windows. The generator sputtered and died, and the main power came back on. The storm had passed. I waited until 8 a.m. before opening the east door. The box was there, just as the amendment had promised. I brought it inside, my hands still shaking. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, not handwritten. It read, "Miller's journal was a test. You failed. The west bathroom is the only way out now. Use the keys. You have 1 hour." I looked at the clock. 8:05 a.m. I looked at the west bathroom door. I looked at the rules scattered across the desk. A test. It had all been a test, and I had failed by believing Miller. Or maybe I had failed by not believing him. The contradictions were the point. There was no right answer. I walked to the bedroom. The photograph of Miller was face up on the nightstand, but it wasn't blank anymore. It showed Miller's face, but his eyes were hollow black holes and his mouth was open in a silent scream. I didn't burn it. I just turned it over. At 8:30 a.m., I took the 2 keys and walked to the west bathroom. I had no choice. I inserted the first key into the lock. It turned smoothly. The door opened onto a small bathroom, just as I'd expected. But in the far corner, almost hidden behind the shower curtain, was another door. I approached cautiously, key in hand. As I inserted the second key into the lock, I heard a sound from the main room. The radio. The red light was flashing. I ignored it. I had to. The key turned, the door opened onto darkness. A staircase descended into the blackness below. I took out my flashlight, clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing stone steps covered in dust and cobwebs. I took a deep breath, then began to descend. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The air grew colder with each step. 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps. I heard something below me, a soft rustling like pages turning. 7 steps, 8 steps, 9 steps. The walls were covered in symbols, just as Miller had described. 10 steps, 11 steps, 12 steps. My flashlight flickered, then died. I was plunged into darkness. I stood frozen on the stairs, listening. The rustling continued below, closer now. I fumbled in my pocket for my spare flashlight, hands shaking. Click. It came on, weaker than the first one, but working. I continued down, counting steps. 13, 14, 15. The symbols on the walls seemed to move in the peripheral light. 16, 17, 18. I heard whispering from below, too faint to understand. 19, 20, 21. The air grew thick, heavy with the smell of dust and something else, something metallic like old blood. 22, 23, 24. The staircase ended at a small landing with a single door. Unlike the others, this one had no lock, no handle, just a smooth wooden surface with symbols carved into it. I pushed gently. The door swung open silently, revealing a room beyond. The room was circular, walls covered floor to ceiling with the same symbols I'd seen on the staircase. In the center stood a stone table, and on it lay a book, larger than Miller's journal, bound in what looked like human skin. As I approached, I noticed something else in the room. Shadows in the corners darker than the surrounding darkness. They moved slightly as if breathing. I reached the table, opened the book carefully. The pages were filled with handwritten text in a language I couldn't understand except for occasional words in English. Rules, feed, obey, break, become. Near the back, I found a page written in English. It was titled The True Rules of Blackwood. I began to read Rule 1. The rules are designed to feed us. Each time you follow a rule, you give us strength. Each time you break a rule, you give us substance. Rule 2. We are the previous rangers who failed to escape. We exist between worlds, sustained by your compliance and rebellion. Rule 3. Henderson is one of us, but not entirely. He serves as our bridge to the living, bringing new rangers to feed us. Rule 4. The rules change based on our needs. Sometimes we need obedience. Sometimes we need defiance. There is no pattern, no logic that serves you. Rule 5. The salt circles, the inventory checks, the radio protocols, all are rituals that sustain us. The more precise you are, the stronger we become. Rule 6. The deer with backward-facing antlers, the footsteps that match your pace, the child crying in the forest. These are manifestations of our hunger, not threats to be avoided. Rule 7. There is no escape. Once you have accepted the job, you belong to us. The only choice is how you serve us. Rule 8. Miller came close to understanding, but not close enough. He thought there was a way out. There isn't. Rule 9. We have been feeding on rangers for 73 years. You are number 24. Rule 10. The west bathroom leads to this place. We allowed Miller to discover it, allowed him to leave the keys. We needed you to find it, to understand. Rule 11. Now that you have read these rules, you belong to us completely. There is no turning back. Rule 12. Your first task is to bring us the next ranger. Prepare the cabin, prepare the rules. Make it convincing, make it necessary. I closed the book, my mind reeling. Everything I thought I understood was wrong. The rules weren't protection, they were participation. My compliance wasn't keeping me safe. It was feeding whatever was in this room. The shadows in the corners moved closer, resolving into human shapes, translucent figures with hollow eyes. Miller was among them, his face contorted in silent scream. One of the figures approached, a woman in a ranger uniform from an earlier era. You understand now, she said, her voice like rustling leaves. There is no escape. Only service. Service to what? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. To us, to this place, to the hunger that sustains us all. She gestured to the book. You have a choice to make, unlike the others. You can join us as one of the hollow ones fed upon for eternity. Or you can become like Henderson, our bridge to the living, bringing others to feed us. And if I refuse? The figure smiled, a terrible stretching of translucent skin. There is no refusal, only choice of service. I looked around the room at the hollow figures, at their suffering. Then I looked at the book. at the rules that had brought me here. I thought of the money I needed, the loans I was trying to pay off. Such mundane concerns now in the face of this cosmic horror. "I'll be your bridge," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The figure nodded as if this was expected. "Then return to the cabin. Prepare the rules. Make them convincing. We will tell you what to write. The next ranger arrives in 1 week." I ascended the stairs, counting steps this time, 30 steps up to the west bathroom. I locked both doors behind me, returned the keys to the desk drawer. The cabin was just as I'd left it, but it felt different now, like a stage set for a play I knew all too well. I looked at the clock. 4:17 a.m., 3 hours until dawn. At 6 a.m., I conducted inventory, noting everything in the logbook. At 8 a.m., I ended my shift, though I knew it had truly ended the night before. At 8:30 a.m., no one arrived. The next ranger wasn't coming yet. I had a week to prepare. The days passed in a haze of preparation. I revised the rules, made them more convincing, more specific. I added new protocols, amended old ones. The hollow ones communicated with me, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in dreams, telling me what to write, what to change. They fed on my compliance, growing stronger with each rule I crafted. I found an old logbook from the 1950s and added the names of long-dead rangers to the roster, creating a false history of service. I perfected the 12 core rules, making them just strange enough to be unsettling, but just plausible enough to be followed. On the 6th day, a package arrived containing a new set of keys and a photograph of the next ranger. A young man with desperate eyes and a mountain of debt, according to the file that accompanied it. I placed the photograph face down on the nightstand, as Protocol 17 required. I left the keys in the desk drawer as Miller had left them for me. On the 7th day, I received a radio call from Henderson, or the thing wearing his form. "Ranger, your replacement arrives tomorrow. Prepare the cabin, prepare the rules, make it convincing." "I will," I replied, my voice hollow even to myself. That night at 2 a.m., I descended to the room below the west bathroom one last time. The hollow ones were waiting, their forms more solid now, fed by a week of my compliance. They surrounded me, whispering in a language I was beginning to understand. "You have served us well," the woman said. "Your reward is coming." "What reward?" I asked. "Continued service. As our bridge, you will not become one of the hollow ones. You will retain your form, your mind, but you will belong to us always." I nodded, accepting my fate. There was no escape, only choice of service. I had made mine. The car was an unmarked sedan. Government plates, immaculate interior that smelled of pine cleaner and something else. Something metallic and sweet like blood on iron. Henderson drove with his hands positioned precisely at 10 and 2 on the wheel. His movements economical, precise. We had been driving for 27 minutes when he spoke again. "There are 12 facilities like Blackwood," he said, his eyes fixed on the road, "each with its own ecosystem, its own rules, its own hunger. You will oversee them all." I turned to look at him. His profile was perfect, too perfect, like a photograph rather than a living face. "Oversee how?" "By ensuring the cycle continues, by bringing new rangers when needed, by adjusting the rules when the hunger changes." He glanced at me, and for a moment I thought I saw something beneath the surface, something hollow and hungry. "You were chosen because you understand the necessity of rules, because you chose service over escape." We drove in silence for another 43 minutes, passing through towns that seemed increasingly unreal, like movie sets rather than places where people lived. The sky remained a uniform gray, neither day nor night, and I realized I hadn't seen the sun since entering Blackwood Forest. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To your new post, your new home." Henderson turned onto a narrow road that wound through hills dotted with identical houses. You'll need to acclimate before your first assignment. The house was like all the others. White siding, black shutters, neat lawn with no flowers. Inside, everything was white and sterile. The furniture was functional but uncomfortable. There were no personal items, no books, no photographs. It was a place designed for occupation, not living. "The rules are simple here," Henderson said, handing me a single sheet of paper. "Follow them precisely." The rules were numbered 1 through 5. 1. You will remain inside the house between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. All doors and windows will be locked. 2. You will check the basement door every hour. The salt line must remain intact. If it is broken, you will recreate it immediately using the container provided. 3. You will receive assignments via the red telephone in the study. You will answer by saying, "Bridge ready." You will not ask questions. You will comply. 4. You will not attempt to contact anyone from your previous life. They no longer exist for you. 5. You will maintain a log of all activities. The logbook will be collected every Monday at 9 a.m. "When does my first assignment begin?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "It has already begun." Henderson walked to the door. "The telephone will ring at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Be ready." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the sterile house. I spent the first night checking the basement door every hour as instructed. The salt line remained intact, a thick white barrier against whatever lay below. At 3:17 a.m., I heard movement in the basement, a soft scraping sound, like something dragging itself across concrete. I didn't investigate. I just checked the salt line, noted the time and sound in my logbook, and continued my rounds. At 2 p.m. the next day, the red telephone rang precisely on time. I picked it up. "Bridge ready?" "Your first assignment," said the voice on the other end. Henderson's voice, but colder, more distant. "Location, Pinewood Lake Station. Current ranger, Samuel Reeves. Status, non-compliant. Task, retrieve and replace." "Retrieve and replace? Reeves has broken Protocol 17. He must be removed. You will bring his replacement tomorrow at 8 a.m. Instructions are in the envelope on the desk." The line went dead. The envelope contained a map, a set of keys, and a photograph of a young woman with hollow eyes. The name on the back read, "Maria Flores." Below that, in red ink, "Suitable replacement, high debt, no family." I spent the rest of the day preparing. I studied the map, memorized the route, reviewed the protocols for Pinewood Lake Station. At 7 p.m., I locked all doors and windows as required. At 8:17 p.m., the scraping sound in the basement returned, louder this time. I checked the salt line, noted the time in my logbook, and continued my rounds. The drive to Pinewood Lake Station took 3 hours and 27 minutes. The station was smaller than Blackwood, a single cabin overlooking a gray, mist-shrouded lake. As I approached, I saw Reeves sitting on the porch, rocking slowly in a chair. He looked up as I parked, his eyes wide with fear. "You're the bridge," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I am," I replied, approaching the cabin. "You broke Protocol 17. Reeves laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "There is no Protocol 17, not really. They make them up as they go along to keep us confused, to keep us afraid. Protocol 17 states that if you see the previous ranger's photograph face up on the nightstand, you must leave immediately," I said, reciting the rule from memory. "You didn't leave." "The photograph wasn't face up when I went to bed," Reeves said, his hands trembling. "It turned over during the night. I woke up and it was staring at me. That's not breaking a rule, that's a trap." I looked at the cabin door. "The rules are the rules, Samuel, you know that." "They're not rules to protect us," he said, standing up. They're rules to feed them. Each time we follow a rule, we give them something. Each time we break a rule, we give them something else. There's no way to win. Then why did you take the job? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The same reason you did. The same reason Maria will. Desperation. Reeves walked to the edge of the porch, looking out at the lake. They prey on the desperate, the ones with no other options. The ones who will follow strange rules for money. I stepped onto the porch. It's time to go, Samuel. He turned to face me, and for the first time I saw the change in him. The hollow look in his eyes, the slight translucence of his skin. You're already becoming one of them, aren't you? The bridge. It's changing you. I didn't answer. I just gestured toward the car. It's time to go. Reeves nodded slowly, then walked to the car without another word. As he got in, I noticed his hands. They were almost transparent now, the bones visible beneath the skin. I drove away from Pinewood Lake Station, leaving Reeves in the back seat, silent and still. We had been driving for 43 minutes when Reeves spoke again. You'll bring Maria there tomorrow. She'll last 3 weeks, maybe a month if she's careful. Then you'll come for her too. I didn't respond. I just kept driving, watching the road ahead. They're not just in the forests and lakes, you know, Reeves continued, his voice growing fainter. They're everywhere, in cities and towns and suburbs, anywhere there's hunger, anywhere there's desperation. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Reeves was fading, his form becoming more transparent with each passing moment. What happens to you? I asked. I'll go back, he said, his voice barely a whisper now. To the place between, to wait for the next cycle. He was almost gone now, just a faint outline in the back seat. It's a hungry thing, being the bridge. It will consume you piece by piece until there's nothing left but the rules. Then he was gone, leaving behind only a faint smell of pine and decay. I arrived at the sterile house at 6:47 p.m., locked myself in at 7 p.m. as required, and continued my hourly checks of the basement door. The scraping sound was louder now, more persistent. I noted it in my logbook, added the details of my first assignment, then tried to sleep. The next morning, I picked up Maria Flores at a predetermined location, a gas station off the highway. She was younger than her photograph suggested, no more than 22, with nervous eyes and hands that wouldn't stop moving. "You're the bridge?" she asked, getting into the car. "I am," I replied, pulling onto the highway. "I'll be taking you to Pinewood Lake Station." "The rules are real, then?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The rules are real," I confirmed. "Follow them precisely." We drove in silence for an hour before she spoke again. "What happens if I don't, if I break a rule?" I thought of Reeves, of his fading form in the back seat. "You become part of the cycle," I said, which was true enough. Maria nodded, looking out the window. "And you? What happens to you?" "I serve," I said, which was also true enough. The drive to Pinewood Lake Station took 3 hours and 19 minutes. As we approached, I noticed something different. The mist over the lake was thicker than before, almost solid. The cabin seemed smaller, more isolated. "You'll find everything you need inside," I said, parking the car. "The logbook is on the desk. Your shift begins at noon." Maria nodded, then looked at me. "Is there any way out?" "Eventually." I thought of Reeves's warning, of the hunger I already felt growing inside me. "No," I said. "There is no way out." She nodded again, then got out of the car and walked to the cabin without looking back. I watched her enter, closed the door behind her, then drove away. It was 11:47 a.m. My first assignment was complete. The red telephone rang at 2 p.m. the next day, precisely on time. I picked it up. "Bridge ready?" "Your second assignment," said the voice on the other end. "Location, Blackwood National Forest. Current ranger, Daniel Mitchell. Status, Potential breach. Task: observe and report. Observe and report? I asked, surprised. I had expected another retrieval and replacement. Mitchell has discovered the west bathroom. He has not entered yet, but he is considering it. We need to know if he will follow Miller's path or forge a new one. There was a pause. This is a test, Bridge. For both of you. I spent the rest of the day preparing for the trip to Blackwood. The thought of returning filled me with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. I hadn't been back since becoming the Bridge, since accepting my role. I wondered how it would feel to walk those paths again, to see that cabin. The scraping in the basement had grown louder over the past week, more insistent. Sometimes I thought I heard voices beneath the scraping, whispers that promised escape, that promised power, if only I would break a rule, just one small rule. I never responded. I just checked the salt line, noted the time and sounds in my logbook, and continued my rounds. The drive to Blackwood took 4 hours and 12 minutes. As I approached the cabin, I felt a strange pull, a sense of homecoming that disturbed me deeply. I parked the car 50 yards from the cabin as instructed, then approached on foot, staying just inside the tree line. Mitchell was outside, pacing back and forth in front of the west bathroom window. He looked thinner than when he had arrived, his face pale, his eyes haunted. He carried a flashlight in one hand and what looked like a journal in the other. Miller's journal, perhaps. I watched him for 2 hours and 47 minutes as instructed. During that time, Mitchell circled the cabin 12 times, checked the perimeter sensors 3 times, and refreshed the salt circle twice. He followed the rules precisely, but his attention kept returning to the west bathroom window. At 6:17 p.m., Mitchell went inside the cabin. I moved closer, positioning myself where I could see through the west bathroom window without being seen. Mitchell was standing before the door, key in hand. He stood there for 17 minutes, not moving, just staring at the lock. Then he made a decision. He inserted the key into the lock, turned it, and opened the door. I held my breath, waiting. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. For 33 minutes, nothing happened. Then the cabin lights went out. I waited another hour, as instructed, then approached the cabin. The front door was unlocked. I entered cautiously, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The main room was empty, the logbook open on the desk. Mitchell's last entry read, "I have to know. There has to be a way out." I walked to the west bathroom. The door was closed. I listened but heard nothing. I tried the knob. It was unlocked. I opened the door. The bathroom was empty, but the shower curtain was pulled aside, revealing the inner door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, revealing the staircase leading down. I took out my flashlight, clicked it on, and began to descend. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The air grew colder with each step. 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps. I heard whispering from below, familiar voices. Miller, Reeves, others I didn't recognize. 7 steps, 8 steps, 9 steps. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with a faint light. 10 steps, 11 steps, 12 steps. I reached the bottom and found the circular room, the stone table, the book bound in human skin. Mitchell was there, standing before the book, his back to me. As I watched, he reached out and touched the page with the true rules of Blackwood. "Don't," I said, my voice echoing in the small room. Mitchell turned to face me, and I saw the change in him. The hollow look in his eyes, the slight translucence of his skin. He was already becoming one of them. "It's a trap," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The rules, the bridge, the cycle, it's all a trap. But there's another way. A third option." "What third option?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "To feed them but not be consumed by them." Mitchell gestured to the book. "To become like them but not one of them. To harness their power." "That's not possible," I said. though I wasn't entirely convinced. Isn't it? Mitchell smiled, a terrible stretching of translucent skin. You're already changing, Bridge. You can feel it, can't you? The hunger, the power. I could feel it. A growing emptiness inside me that could only be filled by compliance, by bringing others to feed the hunger. But also something else. A sense of power, of control that came from knowing the rules, from being part of the cycle. They're offering me a choice, Mitchell continued. To join them as one of the hollow ones, or to become something new. Something like you, but more. Something that can control the cycle, not just serve it. And what do they want in return? I asked. More, Mitchell said, his form flickering like a failing light. Always more. They're hungry, Bridge. So hungry. I watched as Mitchell's form dissolved, becoming one with the shadows in the corners of the room. I was alone again with the book, with the hunger, with the choice. I could return to my sterile house, continue as the Bridge, follow the rules, bring others to feed the cycle. Or I could stay, learn more, perhaps find a way to break the cycle, or control it. I closed the book, turned, and ascended the stairs. 30 steps up to the west bathroom. I locked both doors behind me, left the cabin, and drove back to the sterile house. The red telephone would ring at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and I would answer, Bridge ready. But something had changed. I had seen the third option, felt the pull of it. That night, the scraping in the basement was louder than ever, more insistent. I checked the salt line, noted the time in my logbook, then stood before the basement door, listening. Beneath the scraping, I could hear the whispers more clearly now, promising power, promising escape, promising an end to the hunger if only I would break a rule. Just one small rule. I reached for the doorknob, then stopped. It wasn't time yet. The cycle had to continue. For now. But soon, perhaps, I would find a way to change the rules, to break the cycle, or to control it. The hunger inside me grew stronger, but now it was mixed with something else. Anticipation. The Bridge was changing, becoming something more, and the hollow ones were hungry, so hungry.